The road to full-time RV life begins with vivid dreams. But is that the reality? Well, let's find out. Welcome to RV Out West. I'm your host, Brooks. My Family of Four's base camp is located in the beautiful Pacific Northwest, and our RV adventures radiate out from there. Please grab a mug of coffee and join us as we discuss RVing around the American West. From sweet camping spots, gear and equipment, to tips and tricks, we've got you covered. We are RV Out West. I'm excited to share that RV Out West now has its first sponsor of the show, RV Destinations Magazine. Do you find yourself stuck in a destination rut and need inspiration? Then meet RV Destinations Magazine. Their magazine highlights feature stories of the places that you dream of going to. Some are in the Pacific Northwest and others are not. This is the magazine for all your armchair travels. Please check them out on Instagram at RV Destinations or online at rvdestinationsmagazine.com. And if you subscribe to their magazine, not only will you be getting some great RV content, but they have a discount offer code for RV Out West listeners. That's you. Use code RVOutWest10 to receive 10% off a subscription, and you'll help support this show. And now, on to today's show. I'll be honest, I've had a lot of dreams about going full-time. My wanderlust is strong. I feel an intense metronome counting those moments in time, and I really do feel free when I am on the road. The trajectory of the American dream is a tale that includes family and a mortgage. But what if you say you don't want a mortgage and you sell all of your stuff, free yourself from that stuff that weighs you down, and just go for it? It's a choice. It's not being lucky. If it's something you want to do, then do it. Only you are standing in your way. Joining us today is the Adventure Detour on Instagram, a family who has done just that. They have been full-timing since 2015, and they have been to 42 states, 37 national parks, and after 7 years, they're still at it, raising their family on the road. Thank you, Vanessa, for joining us on RV Out West.
Thanks so much for having us on the show.
I think the big question is kind of what was the inspiration for you and your husband and your family to become full-time RVers?
Right. That's the crazy, it's
I
the
want to hear the
crazy
story.
story. We never ever camped before. We never tent camped. We never RV camped. We'd never even been in an RV. So that's why this is pretty ironic that we sold everything and decided to drive away in one. I had a friend that was a homeschooling friend that told me one day that she was going to do this, and this shocked me. I thought she had lost her mind, honestly, because here she was, a photographer in our area, and had two small kids, and they had this really nice home in the suburbs. And she says to me, "We are selling it all, and we're going to take the two kids and start homeschooling or road schooling," which I didn't know what that was at the time. "And we're going to travel across the country in a fifth wheel." And I said, "What? Is everything okay with you guys?" And, I talked with her a little more about it. And at first I thought she was nuts, but then I found myself asking her a lot of questions. How can you afford to do this? What about the kids and your family and your jobs? And before I knew it, I kind of was like hidden researching, if you will, this lifestyle a little bit. And, at the time we had one child, and we still do. She was only about 4 or 5 at the time. And we had this big old house in the suburbs, your normal, traditional life. And I was staying home with her, and my husband was, going to the office every day. And we were always feeling like we still didn't have enough time together. You just had the weekends, you had the evenings, but it was, rushed and activities, and there just was never enough time. And it felt like with the house and, work and stuff, there was never a lot of extra money as well to take long trips. Like, we took a lot of weekend trips just in the Midwest. We're from Kansas City, Missouri. So we would take a lot of Midwest weekend type trips, but there was never enough time or money to really go out farther. Like we had never even been to a national park before because of living in the Midwest. And so I felt like we just really were always seeking that time together. And when my friend mentioned this option, I the next thing I knew, I'm taking notes and I'm researching Facebook groups. And to be honest, Brooks, there wasn't a lot back then to even research this lifestyle because families weren't really they just weren't really doing this yet, you know? And so the next thing I knew, I was telling my husband this idea and got him on board. And we went, put the house up for sale and bought the RV and had to figure everything out literally from scratch.
And that was back in 2015, right?
Yeah. Yeah. We left in September 2015. Yep.
So you guys have been at this now for about 7 years.
Yeah, it's getting ready to be 8 this September, and that's really wild. Well, we didn't plan on that. We left with a 2-year plan because I thought, oh man, if we're like going to sell the farm, literally, sell everything that we own, I need this to be a significant experience for our family. I don't just want to sell everything and then go for like 6 months or a year, even if we don't like it, even if we hate living in a camper or hate traveling. I wanted to commit to 2 years before we dove in, and went for it. So we got to 2, and then now it's like almost 8. We're still going.
So the conversation at 2 years, then, do you guys just kind of look at each other and like, this is working, let's keep going? Or, was there,
Yeah.
or was it just kind of
Yeah.
all of a sudden it was 3 year mark and you're like, we were supposed to stop at two, kind of what
You
happened there?
know, you're right, is a little bit of both because it happened really fast. On paper, you think if I could leave home and travel nonstop for 2 years, I could see like everything there is to see. I could see all the states, I could see all the national parks. On paper, it's easy to think that. But in reality, it's tough to see all of the things and you still want to keep seeing more. It's almost a bit addictive after a while because you're like, dang it, I didn't get to XYZ in this state and I need to come back again because now I know what I would do differently next time. And it kind of sucked us into where we just couldn't stop. And we still can't.
So what have been some of the biggest challenges that you guys have faced doing the full-time life?
Well, there's many. I always say, and that's kind of what we blog about and what we talk to our audiences about. We're kind of known for being a little bit raw and real because it's not actually full-time RVing is not actually very easy. It's not like living on a vacation like, you might think, or like an RV trip. And the reason why that is it's a lot of work. You think about when you go on a week-long RV trip or you go on a weekend trip and there's all the packing up and the setting up and the tearing down and then you go home and you rest, right? There is no going home to rest because there's always the next driving day, the next pack up, setup, moving day, then it never ever stops. So when you get sick, too bad. You're still moving down the road. And if stuff breaks, you have to try to fix it because there's still a schedule to keep to the next place. And really, if something goes wrong, all of your reservations then fall like dominoes, honestly. And so there's a lot more work in the travel planning and actually doing it than meets the eye, and a lot more expense as well. When you plan a trip, you kind of have an idea, well, this week's going to cost this and this campground's going to cost this. But when you're really out on the road nonstop, there's a lot of unexpected expenses that pop up, mainly due to a lot of RV maintenance and repairs, which your RV is not really meant to live in. Most of them, even if they say they are, they're not necessarily meant for that. And so the wear and tear really kind of causes a lot of repairs, and financially it's more than we ever thought it would be for that end. But yeah, the highs are higher than high. Like the experiences you get are way better than you would ever even expect. However, the challenges and the work involved are also way more than most people expect. So we say it's the two extremes. It's the highest of highs, like the most meaningful memories and moments of your life, but also the lowest of lows, like your RV's in the shop for weeks on end and you're living out of a hotel kind of situation. So you have both, honestly, and you have to just be flexible and take it all in as part of or as part of the experience. Otherwise, you would probably lose your mind, you know?
Right. So piggybacking off of that kind of, and you've already, I think, talked a little bit, but how has, this full-time experience changed your perspective on life?
Oh man, a lot actually. I mean, we all want quality time with our families and quality time with our children when they're young, and time just seems to go by faster and faster. And I think the older we get, it seems to really be apparent that time is moving quickly. And so I see things differently now because in our house, it was living traditionally was kind of like Groundhog Day, Monday through Friday, you're at work. At night, you're fixing dinner, cleaning up, shuffling kids, going to bed. And then you have these two precious days a week in which you've got to do all the yard work, all the house maintenance, whatever needs to be done there. And then you might squeak in one day for some fun, family time or activities and things. But with this lifestyle, it really makes you kind of pause and think about living differently. Like I was living that lifestyle to pay for that house, to pay for two nice cars, to fund that is was our groundhog day. But when we lived simpler, the way that we're living now, it gave us the time to have these experiences. And sure, we live with less, but it just kind of opened my eyes to a whole new, I guess, American dream, if you will.
And that's kind of one of the things like we were talking about as we were doing our email exchanges about, I'm sure you hear a lot from folks like, you're so lucky to be able to do this. But
Mhm.
in reality, it's not luck. You and
Right.
your husband and your family made a choice to make this happen,
Yeah.
and you're doing it. And I applaud you for that. And that's fantastic.
Oh, thank you. I appreciate that. Yeah, there's a lot of sacrifices, involved in that, financial sacrifices, and then different, things. And as a parent, you also think, am I giving my child the normal experiences that she would have if we lived in a house? And the answer is just raw and real. It's just no.
It's
You're
different.
provide. Yeah, it's different experiences. And so yeah, there's a lot of sacrifices made to make that happen. But I mean, for us, it's worth it. It's not going to be worth it for everybody.
What has been, a couple of really memorable experiences you guys have had while living on the road?
Okay, well, let me think about that. I'm going to say probably the fact of getting into hiking and experiencing national parks. So I mentioned a little bit earlier, we had never been to a national park before, or really ever been hiking before because we lived in the city, well, really in the suburbs, but that just wasn't what we ever did, and our vacations were never nature centered. They were always, let's go to Florida and go to the beach, or let's go to a theme park or take a cruise or something like that. So we never had outdoor recreation really as part of our life. And it's kind of a funny story. So when we were planning this adventure those years ago, I had to start thinking like, well, where are we going to go and what is going to be our goal for this? Because when you can go anywhere, it's a little bit overwhelming, honestly. So I thought I want to see all the national parks. That's like the big, huge family goal. And so we're here in Kansas City and we visited REI for the first time. It had just opened actually not too long before then. And so I remember walking in there and telling the sales guy, we want good hiking shoes. We'd never been hiking for real, And what are good hiking shoes to take to a national park? And so I remember leaving the store with all three of us in our shiny new hiking shoes, thinking, oh my goodness, we're really gonna be outdoors people for once. And and then packing them in the camper and leaving. And the first time we brought those hiking shoes out was in Maine in Acadia National Park. And I thought, this is the best feeling ever. We've made it all the way to Maine. We're in a national park, we're hiking. My daughter's like scrambling over all these boulders and running wild and just loving it. And she was the kid that was never athletic and not into sports or anything. And she just fell in love with hiking instantly. Like it was totally her jam. And I'm thinking, we would have never experienced any of this if we didn't like go out of our comfort zone, and just go for it. We would have always just wondered what if.
And again, that I applaud that. That's great. And good for you guys for doing that. I hope you guys are enjoying this episode. I know that I am, but I'd like to take a moment just to tell you about today's sponsor. RV Destinations Magazine is the premier provider of nationwide RV destination articles, sharing stories about the places you want to see for yourself. Subscribe today for digital or their new print magazine at rvdestinationmagazine.com. Being on the road for these last 7 years, how do you guys stay connected with family and friends?
That's a great question because it's not always easy. We've been gone for a long time and we don't go home very often. So everyone's kind of gone about you know, their regular life. And our life is so different now than it was when we were all connected that um, we originally started a blog when we started traveling just so our family and friends could kind of see what we were doing and our experiences. And that was really helpful to keep people kind of in the loop because there was a lot of misunderstanding with our family and our closest friends on what this lifestyle even was or why we were doing it. There was even a little bit of family pushback there because they thought you can't just leave your house. You've got to do the normal thing with your daughter. You have responsibilities. You can't just decide to go live in a van down by the river and let go of your life. You're an adult with a family. And so we actually had quite a bit of pushback that I didn't expect, um, based on lack of understanding of why someone would even want to do this, with a family. And so we keep in touch with everyone now. And ever so often we go back. We're going to go back this summer and visit. My parents are lucky enough that they come see us every winter, usually wherever we are. And that's usually in Florida. And so we keep in contact that way. But yeah, it's definitely different because it's very different lifestyles now from then, from before to now. But social media and things make it easy to keep in contact with people too.
Yeah, and there's
Yeah, which is
FaceTime too.
really nice.
Yeah.
FaceTime is great for my daughter and the grandparents. They love that.
On your Instagram, on the Adventure Detour, you guys, you are very transparent about kind of the RV life and that shot of your husband working on the AC unit and you're filming him and just recently you did the Instagram slideshows about your finances and how April had a lot of hidden expenses that you guys hadn't quite
Yes.
planned for. So how do you manage your finances while you're living on the road?
That's a good question because, like I mentioned, it's a lot more expensive to live on the road in reality than on paper. We always thought that living in an RV could be a lot cheaper than living in a house. And I think for quite a few people, it is, depending on what market your house was in, what part of the country, and then how you RV, it can be a lot cheaper. But for us, it's honestly pretty close to the same because instead of having a mortgage and utilities, now we spend the money on campgrounds and activities and a huge increase in gas prices, for traveling all the time. And so for us, it's a wash. But I always tell people the number one thing to do is to plan for unexpected expenses. So when you go through your budget and you think, okay, I've got everything figured out, all the line items match up for what I think it's going to be, then create a separate category with a few $100s each month for RV repairs and unexpected expenses. Because honestly, almost every month, pretty much every month, there's some large unexpected expense with traveling, and it's usually an RV repair, honestly. In some months there's multiple RV repairs, which is what happened to us in April. But it's just better when you're not blindsided by that and in advance, okay, I'm going to have this in my budget each month, and then even possibly a savings account, because I mentioned that a little bit earlier. If you live in your RV and your RV has to go into the shop for repairs, sometimes that can take a while and you don't actually have a place to go. You may end up, being in a hotel for an extended period of time. We've had that happen multiple times on the road, and we've been in hotels as long as 2.5 weeks at a time. So you really have to kind of have a just in case, kind of budget for that.
One of the things I've always been curious about is if we think about a traditional 40-hour work week at home in the suburban lifestyle, right? I'm in the office for 40 hours. The kids are in school for 30 hours or whatever. How do you kind of manage getting road school done, right? Because I mean, is your daughter doing road school in the back seat of the tow vehicle while you're driving down the road? I mean, are you sitting with a laptop on your lap while your husband's driving and you're, doing what you need to do? Or are you, yeah, just kind of what does that look like?
Yeah, exactly right, honestly. So I made the decision when we started this that we were going to focus on our travels and sort of work everything around that. Now, that's not how all families operate on the road. There's a lot of them that even do traditional school or online school, and they're on a regular Monday through Friday, schedule, just online versus in person. And so that isn't providing the same kind of flexibility. But we made the decision that we wanted our travels to be a huge part of our daughter's actual education, which is why I say road schooling. And so with that in mind, we pretty much go do our sightseeing when the crowds are low. And when the crowds are high, we catch up on work and school. So, for example, you will never see us out sightseeing on the weekend or hiking on the weekend. We will be at home, like catching up on the week's work and school on the weekends. And the same thing within the car. Car is a great time to catch up on things because you're just, en route to the next location. Or even at night, we'll do school and work early in the morning or even at night once it gets dark. We are super flexible like that. And that won't work with every child because not every kid, kids thrive on usually, a schedule. But that for our family, that was the perfect way to do it so that we could have our experiences, which is a huge part of her school anyway, and then kind of work everything around it. And we are freelance writers, so we can kind of, work our work schedule around whatever our travel schedule is. And so that I'm super, super thankful for that. And content creation, content creators for social media and brands and things. And so that's also super, super flexible.
So for listeners who are maybe considering doing something like this, what advice would you have to give them? And this is kind of the what you know now would you have told your younger self 7 years ago?
Well, and this can really hold true with everything in life because even before we decided to travel full time, we had decided that we were going to homeschool our daughter. We just kind of were living a little bit differently. And so I would tell people and my younger self, if I had the chance, don't feel like you have to live a certain way just because that's how it's done, or that's how society is saying you need to, or that's how your family is living. If you have a dream or a goal, even if it seems so out there, so out of the box, it's almost like you owe it to yourself, to not live in the what ifs, like to just go for it. It may not be your perfect life or your perfect fit, but it may be the adventure of a lifetime. And it's definitely not going to be easy. It's never easy, whether you're a full time RVer or an entrepreneur or whatever. It's a rocky road to get there. So don't look online and see people just, you know, trying to tell you otherwise, because of course they're capturing the top of the mountain, not the trek that took them years to get up that mountain. So just don't be afraid to go after your dreams based on what others' opinions are of them, I guess is what I would say.
Yeah, I saw a TV show one time and they said someday is not a day of the week.
Right. Right. And you may not live to someday. That's another really, I'm glad you mentioned that. That's another really valid point. So that was another reason why we went for this. We had basically all the men in my husband's family just did not have a very long lifespan. His father died really young in his 50s. His mom died really young. He has a rough genetic track record in his family. And like his parents both wanted retirement and had all these dreams for retirement, but neither one of them made it to retirement. And I always think that, there's so many people that say, I'm going to travel when I retire, or I'd like to live in a motorhome when I retire, or all of these things. And that's fine. I mean, that's amazing to have those dreams. We all do. But just know that you may not get to that point, or your partner may not get to that point, or you may make it to that point but not be physically able, to enjoy it the way that you thought. And like, we could do that as a retired couple, but we wouldn't have our daughter with us, and we wanted her to have those experiences. So today is the day, I guess.
Yeah, that's good. Now, RV Out West is all about the Pacific Northwest. So I would be
Mhm.
amiss if we did not talk about your experiences in the Pacific Northwest.
Yeah, yeah, what a beautiful part of the country. Oh my gosh.
So, first things first, what surprised you the most about the area? And what I'm getting at is, when I talk to people when I'm traveling and I'm like, oh, I'm from the Pacific Northwest, there's all these stereotypes
Mhm.
about whatever the weather, the people, this, that, and whatever. But what kind of surprised you, and what surprised you about the area, and what's something that exceeded your expectations?
Well, the whole area exceeded my expectations, actually, because I had been to California before, but until we started traveling, I had not been to the Pacific Northwest. And I was just floored by all of it, the coastal areas, the mountains. I'll tell you a funny story and you'll probably laugh, but being from the Midwest, I thought if you wanted to experience a lava tube cave, you had to go to Hawaii. I didn't know that existed in the US. There's so many things like that, honestly, which I laugh about now, that traveling has actually taught us, because we just didn't know those things. The hot springs, I would have never realized there's so many natural hot springs that you can just hike to and jump in, and some of them are full of naked people, which is a whole nother story, where I took my 6-year-old and did that. But yeah.
That's
um
funny.
yeah, yeah, that was a hoot, but it was a fun day anyway. We made the best of it. But yeah, just so many incredible, the waterfalls, and like the rocks on the coast of Oregon, and the whole rainforest, and Washington. Like, there's a rainforest in Washington. Are you kidding me? Just different things like that I would have never have even known existed, and we loved it. I would love to go back.
What was your favorite campground?
Oh man. I don't know that I remember. That was the summer of 2017. So that was a long time ago.
Oh, that was a while. You are due for a return visit. So then
Right?
when you come back, what is now on your must-see list in the area?
We did not get to do North Cascades. So the national parks are our main travel bucket list, is to go to all the national parks. And we had a snafu, which is like what I talked about. Things go wrong on the road, and you can't really just go home. But my daughter had a sinus infection, and we drove through the mountains on the way up to Washington, and her eardrum burst, which was kind of a rough deal, because after going to urgent care, they're like, you need to allow, as much as 4 weeks of not changing altitude for her ear to heal. So we were at the time on the Columbia River Gorge. It's beautiful area there. But if we went out of the Columbia River Gorge in any direction, we were changing altitude like a lot. And so we had to park it there for, it was like 5 weeks or something, for her ear to heal. And in the meantime, we missed the boat on going up to North Cascades. So I got to make it back there for sure.
Okay. I have a series of rapid fire questions because we're starting to wind down here. You ready?
Okay. Yeah.
Okay. These are rapid fires. Don't think too long. Favorite place for
Okay.
barbecue in Kansas City?
Gates.
Does Santa, for the kids that are listening, does Santa visit you on the road?
Oh, absolutely. Yes. We have a great time. Santa always finds us.
Okay, good. What is your percentage of campgrounds versus boondocking when you guys are spending the night?
Zero. We are not boondockers at
Okay, so
all.
you're full-time campgrounders.
Yes.
Travel days, where do you typically like to overnight when you're doing longer, when you need to string a couple of travel days together?
We usually just find a campground that's close to the highway that has pull-throughs that we can stay, like, hooked up, so very long pull-throughs.
Favorite national park?
Ooh, probably Acadia. Love Acadia.
Where's the one place on your list that you haven't gotten to yet?
Yellowstone, ironically. We've tried 3 times, and we still have not made it to Yellowstone.
Okay, is there anything that we didn't talk about that you would like to cover?
Well, I will mention one thing that could be helpful for your listeners. So we have a website. We're bloggers, and our website is theadventuredetour.com. And I mentioned that I talk a lot about problems in RVing and traveling as well as the benefits. But one of the biggest problems in RV travel right now is getting campsite availability, especially in national parks and state parks. And so I have a freebie on my website that is some tricks that we've learned over the years to stay in state park campgrounds and national park campgrounds, sometimes even if they're sold out. So that could be a good resource for your listeners.
And then where can they find you on all the socials?
Yeah, so we are at the Adventure Detour, and that's we're mainly Instagrammers, but we're also on TikTok, Facebook, and YouTube.
I want to take a moment and just say thank you so much, Vanessa, for
Oh, thank
taking it.
you.
Yeah, I really appreciated chatting with you.
Yeah, it was great. It was very fun, and it was nice to meet you. I really appreciate it.
Thank you so much for listening. To help the show grow, please share with your RVing friends and family about this podcast. If you have an idea for a topic you'd like me to discuss, please contact me via rvoutwest.com. Our next full episode in 2 weeks, I had randomly run into a couple at a campground who are living out of a converted short bus touring the United States. We chat with them and learn all about their why, and they share some fun stories from being on the road. It's going to be a great episode. Now, get out there, explore, and go see what's beyond the horizon. Thanks so much for listening to RV Out West. Join us again in 2 weeks with our next episode. Please like and subscribe to our podcast on iTunes or wherever you choose to get your podcasts so you never miss an episode. And I sure would appreciate if you left a rating or a review of the show. Special thanks to Scott Holmes Music for providing the intro song, We Are One. RV Out West can be found on Instagram and Facebook, where you can interact with us and follow along on our RV adventures around the Pacific Northwest. So get out there, explore, and go see what's beyond the horizon.